We're pretty excited to be able to demo this. There's been a lot of good changes in the past couple weeks. So
good.
This is
I look forward to it. And if Joshua can turn on his video, that would be great, if you have one.
She's not having internet issues.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Are we ready?
I think we are. Josh wanted to join twice. Okay. All right.
So nice, got to do it twice. All right.
All right. All right. As you know, the purpose of this is to show me the status of your project, what requirements you've gotten, and which ones you are still working on, if any. So without further ado, I think share screen's enabled. So proceed.
David, do you want to share your screen and then I can do the introduction?
Yeah, I'll share my screen and you can intro us.
Okay.
I do not. There we go.
All right. Just waiting on the share screen right now.
And I need to also share.
I believe it's enabled.
I just need to share a couple different things.
Okay, here we go.
Awesome. Can you see Visual Studio?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we are the Star Map Generator, Team F. I am Katelyn Cook. These are my teammates, David Kasper, Casey Lowman, and Joshua Tirone. We will be showcasing our, as of right now, current final deliverable or final release. We have met all of our customer requirements as per the rubric, and we are about to showcase our current progress. There are a few little odds and ends that we will probably have to tie up after the demonstration, but as far as the major functions and requirements go, we believe we have achieved that to satisfaction. So here is our demonstration. David?
So I've got the main window for the program right here. The user interface is relatively similar to where it was last time, but we've made a couple changes with the buttons we've got here. So I'm going to choose a latitude and a longitude. You can enter it in this text box here, or you can choose a preset location. I'm going to choose Huntsville, and so that auto fills the latitude and longitude, but I can also edit these to go slightly outside of Huntsville. And then for the date and the time, we can either hit a button to use the current date and time, or we can enter a custom date and time here. I'm actually going to do Huntsville. I'm going to go to August 21st, 2017 at 12:20, and then we can also choose the time zone. It's based on an offset to Universal Coordinated Time, UTC. So I've got UTC -6. Huntsville, we have a clear inputs button, which I won't test right now. I'll do that in a second. And then generate map. And this is our star map. Now, the interesting thing about this date is this is the day of the eclipse. So I'm using these buttons here to zoom in and out. And there's a scroll bar. I can scroll with the scroll wheel, the mouse horizontally and vertically. And then right here is our sun. And on top of it is the moon. Now the moon is only an outline because since it's in an eclipse, it's not reflecting any sunlight. So it's technically a new moon, but it's positioned correctly. So all these stars in the map, we're loading everything from the auxiliary file containing the Yale catalog of stars and filtering out everything with a magnitude greater than 6. So all the small stars. The image that's been generated here, I can save to disk by either going File, Save, or by hitting Control S. I'm going to save it in this. I don't know if it's showing my the file dialog on the window, but it's popped up here. And I've just saved the image to disk, so that satisfies the requirements for. And it shows a pop-up successfully saved your image again. I don't know if that comes through on the screen share, but that satisfies requirement number 2 for generating images. Requirement number 3, we do have a scrollable window that the map is displayed in. Requirement 4 is the stars come from the Yale catalog, and also the star labels can be shown and hidden. So I'm doing that with there's a series of checkboxes at the bottom of the settings page, or the bottom of the settings section. I can show and hide the star labels, and then I can also show and hide the solar system labels, so planets and sun and moon. Right here we've got some planets: Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, Venus, and I can show and hide all of their labels as well as the sun and moon labels. Location and phase of moon is correct because this is the date of the eclipse. We've also got the Messier objects. Those are the purple dots here, and then I can show and hide those object labels as well in the settings. And then finally, we've got constellations, and these are all visible here. And the constellation labels can be shown and hidden as well. So all the labels can be hidden and all the labels can be shown. And then when we save the image, it's exported in whatever state the image is currently in at the time it's being displayed. So if all the labels are not shown right now and we export the image, it saves without labels. So I'm saving it in this debug folder. This should show on my screen, the debug folder. I'm gonna do properties, and the image has the DPI of the image is 300, both horizontal and vertical, which satisfies the DPI requirement for the project. And then one last feature, we also have the at the top right, we have the position and the date stamped onto the image every time we render a new map. That way, when you save the image to disk and then need to look at it later, it's very easy to see where and when it was from. So that's it for the functional requirements. The other big requirement is extensibility. And so there's two main areas in which we're making use of extensibility. And so the main one is in how the objects are rendered. How the objects are rendered and then how they're also positioned. Every object that is seen in space inherits from a base celestial object class, which defines all the various properties and a couple auxiliary functions for converting things like converting the magnitude to our actual display scale, and then a couple abstract functions that the child objects have to implement, namely how to draw themselves and also how to size and position themselves. So if someone wanted to add on a new type of celestial object, the only thing they need to do is create a new class that inherits from and implements this abstract class. And then also they need to create a reader that can take this data. They need to create a reader to obtain that data from a specified source. Right now we have a class called we have an interface called an iData aggregator, which defines a method, which defines basically a contract for how it's going to get data. And we have our concrete implementation, which is the celestial data aggregator. And what it does is it takes these iData reader objects and then iConstellation reader objects, which can be any type of reader to get these objects from. So right now we're only reading them from a couple of different text files, but you could also connect these to a databases and just define a new reader and plug it into the celestial data aggregator. So you could add, if you wanted to add minor planets or other galaxies, you could do that by changing 2 or 3 files in the code, or by adding 2 or 3 files in the code and not having to change anything. So, and if you wanted to change which stars are displayed, you can just edit the star catalog without having to touch any of the actual code. So I can go ahead and show a couple different locations. So this is the eclipse, no labels. So let's do Huntsville right now. Looks like this. So you can see the sun is in the sky here about where it should be today. Actually, it's the correct time zone. We've got the constellations that are currently over Huntsville. The sun. Let me find it. Oh yeah, and then here's the moon in its partial phase. It's sitting on top of a constellation right now, but that is the correct location and phase. And I believe that is everything for the program features.
Okay. Anybody have anything else to say? I've got my usual agenda is to do pretty much just what you did. Go through the requirements one by one. I do have a couple of questions I've put into the chat. These are just for my own notes. Roughly how many of those 20,000 stars are you showing that meet the criteria?
We're showing about 2,700 I think about 2,000 at a time. Okay.
Because obviously some are below the horizon and some are too dim.
Yeah. This circle indicates what is the visible horizon.
Okay. A couple of comments. Latitude and longitude. You have degrees and minutes.
Yes, sir.
I missed that. I thought I was looking at degrees. Degrees and minutes is probably pretty good. I think that's within about a mile. For most purposes for a star map, I think that's fine. The preset locations, how do preset locations get in there?
There's something that we have hard coded right now for testing. We've thought about adding a feature where you can add preset locations as well. That wouldn't be too hard to do. We can also have them stored in a file. Right now, there's something we've hard coded for ease of testing and ease of access.
Okay. And that's a good idea. I do think it's a very good idea to use the eclipse date, because that gets you, first of all, to immediately find out whether or not the sun and the moon are being displayed according to the time. And since the moon moves much more slowly than the sun, it's a good check. So that's a good
make sure
thing.
they line up.
And you picked a couple in the southern hemisphere. That's good.
Oh yes, that's good.
I noticed for one of the things I always use as one of my gauges about how correct you are is to look at the planets and see if they are roughly in a line for the celestial plane, and it looks like they are.
Okay.
So that's one sort of reality check for that.
Okay.
I will say this is very good. It's very good to what you have is very good, and it's very good to have it this early. That is, with a couple of weeks to debug it, try some more out, get your deliverable and polish it, get your code and make sure your code is well documented and so forth, and to make sure that your tests are all recorded. So you're in very good shape for that.
Awesome.
I will say, as far as the time zones go, this is a tough one. Right now, for example, Huntsville is on UTC -5 because of daylight savings time. And in fact, in August 2017, it was still in daylight savings time as well. Now, there are tables online and that sort of thing for converting a sort of universal time, sidereal time, if you will, into a UTC, and depending on the latitude and longitude, determine the actual time zone. In the United States, this is totally wacko because,
Yeah.
as you know, there are some states that don't fit. But the truth is, the only way to really have that is with an exhaustive database of locations around the world. Nearly every country in populated areas does what we do. They have time zones that are jagged. And so you can't just go by the latitude and longitude and figure out what the
Yeah.
time zone is going to be. I don't have a good solution for you.
Okay. There's also some countries in Korea and in Australia. They use there's a couple of places where they have a half-hour time zone.
Right, and the most
So it's
important
like
one is India,
UTC plus
which
15
has,
and a half.
yeah, India did that. It's a very smart move. They have they had two time zones, and they said, you know, if we split the difference, the entire country can be on one time zone.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
People have proposed
Smart.
that in the United States, but oddly enough, people on the East Coast and the West Coast have objected. So my comments are very minor. Try to show shortcuts on the menu items. That's a typical convention that we do. Like you said, save
right.
can be done with Control S and so on. Those are perfectly fairly minor in terms of cosmetic ways to do things. You've chosen different colors for the different kinds of objects. It
Yes.
occurred to me that your settings down on the lower left corner, you might, although it might be hard to read, perhaps with a background for each of those in the color that's shown. For example, the, what are they? Messier objects. You could have them be that magenta background in the
Yeah, that
setting,
makes sense.
just to, you see what I'm saying, just to kind of
Yeah.
connect the colors of what I'm looking at.
We
but
could
these
also
are
have the text border be that color or something like that.
Actually, yeah, the border, I would not, and people have often suggested this, I would not put the text in that color. First of all, you have a bunch that are white, so what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
And magenta text is very hard to read if I'm really trying to understand it. But I think you think you've got a reasonable color scheme. The labels are overlapping necessarily. When you zoom in, I presume the labels are easier to read. How
Yes,
far
and that's
can you zoom?
pretty much as far as possible. There's not really a limit to it. So, and that's something we're going to fix in the next couple of days is implementing an algorithm to offset the labels so they're not on top of each other. We didn't think that would be as big of an issue as it ended up being, but there's a lot of labels, a lot of objects to label, and so like if you look right here on the screen, it's almost impossible to read any of those. You can show and hide some of them, but if they're the same label type,
Yes.
like two Messier objects, you can't do that. So
Sure.
just we're working on an algorithm that'll just offset. It'll just check all the rectangle boundaries and then shift the appropriate label down.
Okay.
In that case, though, you also run into issues with it's not clear necessarily which label is associated with which object, but there's definitely a good solution. We've got some time to figure it out.
That's great. The issue you're describing has been an issue for map makers for centuries. So bear that in mind. A lot of effort is spent on just that in every map application you've ever used so that labels will not overlap. And also for maps, it's even worse because as you zoom out, there's certain labels you don't want to show because they're of small places. I find that, and they're the two Messier objects that you pointed to that are practically on top of one another. It's really kind of funny. People have joked about it because those two objects are actually probably some millions of light years away from each other. One is much closer to Earth than the other, but Messier located them, so there they were. The one that's further away is probably way bigger. You've done a really good job, and it looks like it'd be fun to use. I noticed that the constellations of the zodiac follow the planets, which is what you'd expect because that's the ecliptic, that is the zero celestial latitude, which is, and it's slanted by about 30 degrees because we're in Huntsville, which is about at 30 degrees latitude. So It all looks fairly accurate. Have you tried to take it outside on a night and given a good look just to see?
It was too cloudy last night. I was upset.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Like I
Too much
say,
light pollution.
this one is hard to validate for that kind of reason. You know, there are apps out there that will show you what the constellations look like for a particular date, and you can compare. But all in all, I'm very pleased. Only a couple of minor things. Your time, if you want to show your time in 24-hour time, you should probably have a note next to where it says time when you enter it, so that people know
Right,
that
that makes
it's
sense.
24-hour time. That's pretty common among astronomers and people using UTC, but probably not always known by just the average user.
Makes sense.
And
And we should probably do that for the label on the
Yeah.
maybe the label on the map as well.
Somewhat, yeah. Although, if you don't put AM and PM, it's very often assumed that it's
Yeah.
24-hour time. My European friends find that really funny because they're used to, I mean, they don't refer to, like if it's 3 in the afternoon, I'll say, what time is it? And he'll say it's 3 o'clock. But on a train schedule, it will say 1500 because they're used to doing that. And it makes a lot of sense for anything
It
where you
does.
might confuse the time. All in all, it looks very good. Looks very good.
Thank you.
I have assigned this project, and it's been assigned by other instructors as well, for several iterations of this class. This is probably the best progress on this that I've seen, certainly at this point. You've got your picture, you've got everything placed, so you deserve a pat on the back for that.
Thank you.
So all I can tell you is don't blow it. Make sure your deliverable is in order. Make sure it's polished. You have the luxury of having essentially tweaks to be done to the app at this point. Make sure you save this branch right here and focus on getting your documentation complete. That's a fair chunk of your score on the final deliverable. So you've got the time. Go ahead and spend the time on it. I'm very impressed. I'm not sure what else to ask you. The extensibility part, I probably should say something about that. Let me see. I have a crazy dog who barks at everything. Go back to your code, your IDE for a moment, where you were showing the code. Just a moment, I have to yell at my... He likes to bark, but he is here together with everything. I'm actually not familiar with C#. When you put get set, does that mean to automatically generate get and set methods that are available so you don't have to declare them?
Yes, yeah. It means that that field is that variable is it's a property, not a field. So it has automatically generated get and set accessors. You can also format it so you define the get accessor right here as well. So I could change this to
okay. I'm just
something like that.
I see. So I'm just unfamiliar with the notation. Python has a similar feature, and it's extremely useful. And
is, yeah.
certainly unclutters your code. Your strategy for making it extensible is exactly what I would expect knowledgeable object-oriented developers to do, which is to have each of your types of object as a class, so that as a subclass of your main celestial data aggregator class, and then I simply develop another subclass to it. I already know what methods to use for the most part. I simply have to figure out how to get the values. So
Yeah.
That's a very good design for that. Make sure that that part of the design is documented. And in fact, I'd suggest what you do is say, suppose I have a new kind of object here's how I would implement it. I mean, obviously don't show the details of the implementation, but show the layout of the subclass that you would put in to fulfill that requirement.
Okay, that makes sense. And then you'd also need to implement a new reader for it as well. But the great part is you can get everything from a text file, and you can get a different type of object from a database, and it works exactly the same as long as you implement your own custom reader for it.
Whatever that reader, however that reader is defined, right?
Yeah.
Okay. For the on-screen display, the user can show or hide the labels. You chose the convention that when you do a save, you will save whatever is in fact displayed.
Yes.
If labels are displayed, then in the display that I see, then when I do a save, I'll get those labels. Otherwise, not. And that I think that's a reasonable choice. Some people would want to have a separate set of options for what's saved, what labels are being saved with it.
Makes sense. We kind of thought about it from the user's perspective, which is more frustrating, to get labels when you don't want them, or to want it with to try and get it with no labels and figure out that there's not a way to do that, and it's going to save with labels regardless. And that seems far more frustrating.
Yeah, and I agree. What you save, what you see is what you save, is probably a reasonable choice. I'm looking through the requirements. You'd already gone through them. The only other constraint at the bottom was that you didn't use any copyrighted material.
Okay.
The star data itself is definitely not copyrighted. Now, that actually doesn't, when it says no copyrighted material, that's actually an out-of-date constraint, because there's certainly open source that is copyrighted. That doesn't mean that you can't copy it. It means that the conditions under which you copy it are fixed and meant to be open, so that you can't claim any more protection from copying than the stuff you're using.
Makes sense.
Make sure that you document any of that for any of your display.
Yes,
I don't think we're using anything.
Sorry.
I don't think we're using anything that's open source. We're using a couple. I mean, we're using the .NET framework and some stuff that comes with that, but we're not. I don't think we did any third-party libraries for rendering. It's all the system.drawing, which comes default in .NET.
Okay, Katelyn, you had something to say?
Yes, in regards to the Messier catalog, that we did use a different catalog than the one that was initially provided, but I believe that we have that documented on the team report and also approved by you earlier.
It's still the exact same data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Messier objects themselves are not copyrightable. He's been dead for over 200 years.
Right. We just wanted to make sure that we got that out in the open, that even though it's the same catalog, different source for that particular catalog.
Oh, that's fine. In the first time we did this project, we didn't give the students any data at all and made them go find it. I didn't think that was quite fair. What it does is this can give you an idea of what the form is, and if you find it in an easier to read format or in a more compact format, particularly for 20,000 stars, certainly makes sense. So
there's definitely a lot of constellation data that's still missing that I had to go look through and get manually.
How so? We didn't list all the...
A lot of the documentation is incomplete, and a lot of it's not consistent.
Okay, please let me know, because the star map generator has the stuff that I give you along with it has a lot of crud has accumulated over the years. And if there's something that doesn't belong or something that's needed, let me know so I can include it, so that any future assignments like this, students will have the benefit of that.
I think the big thing that was missing was a lot of it didn't contain which stars were linked to which other stars, so we had to manually figure some of that out. It didn't do that for every single constellation.
Interesting.
At least
there's a body of belief that is the lines connecting the stars are optional. That is, the constellation consists of these following stars. I don't really subscribe to that belief because the constellations are just random.
Some resources just describe the constellations as basically regions in the sky, whereas like you have your main drawing, the picture, but there's also all these other stars that are there but aren't even part of the picture.
And astronomers do that all the time. They will say, for example, that a particular Messier object is in a particular constellation. And as you know, astrology uses what constellation is the sun in, and you know it's not a star that's part of that constellation. So it's a matter of navigating the sky when they didn't have degrees and sextants and all kinds of tools they could use to actually look at the sky, to actually measure it that way. But a very, very well done effort. You have reason to be proud of yourselves. I look forward to seeing your final deliverable. Bear in mind that while I may pick it apart and have picky complaints and stuff, that's part of my job. And in fact, if there's not a whole lot wrong, I have to pick at small stuff or else there's nothing to say. So I look forward to it, and a job well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? You guys make my job a lot easier. On the other hand, I'm challenged. Was this project too easy?
I wouldn't say that it was too easy because a lot of the data that we had to go through, it was a lot of research in really kind of corroborating whether that data was correct and whether we were actually using the data correctly, especially when it came to the constellation lines with the asterisms.
Oh yeah, that was awful.
Lines. We were kind of running down to the wire trying to figure out what that was and what it really was used for.
Okay.
And then the actual rendering engine that generates the map is very complicated. So it was not easy. It was a lot of trial and error.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
There were a ton of math issues we ran into. For example, these we have all these in polar coordinates. We have to convert them to Cartesian, but in C# user interfaces, the convention is the position 0, 0 is the top right corner. So at some point we realized that all of our constellations were flipped around they were flipped around the line y equals x.
Yes.
Because
Java has the same.
Inverted.
Java does the same thing, and what it really meant was that everything you learned in geometry was useless.
Yeah, pretty much.
If you think that's difficult, try to figure out how to draw arrowheads using those coordinates, using calculations for that. That was no fun at all. So I'm glad you had some details like that to work out. Those are pretty realistic. Good for you. That's probably about all I have, unless there's something else you need to bring up for me.
No, just making sure that we get all of our documentation in by, I believe you said May 4th.
Yeah.
Was it delivery?
Yeah.
Yes.
That gives you 2 weeks. Almost, yeah, 2 weeks from today. That ought to be ample. On the other hand, and I know you've got other classes and other job responsibilities. Don't leave the deliverable to the last minute, of course. But I think you've got time to get it polished and time to get the code polished. Do remember the warnings that I've given about how to deploy your executable. So be prepared to deliver it as an executable or a bundle or a package, however you're going to do it, so that I don't have to have anything except what you give me and essentially double click and run it. That make sure that may take a little longer than you think. So give yourself time to make sure that works.
Anytime there's supporting files, it's always complicated.
Yes, and the different platforms have different ways of dealing with it, and they're as long as you know what that convention is, you can usually get away with it. But you need to make sure it does work.
Okay, is it going to be an issue? So I think Is it going to be an issue if it makes you install like an updated version of the .NET library to be able to run it? Because that's built into Windows. That would be like updating your updating your Java runtime.
I'm familiar with certainly familiar with .NET, and as I had said before, I think it's fair for you to assume that I'm using a reasonably recent version of all these. Now, sometimes Java will complain if you are if your version is a week older than the one it expects. But I don't think that .NET is quite so picky.
Okay. We're also using, I don't think any of the technology we're using here is newer than about 10 years old. So we could probably make this work on like a very old version of .NET and then have it backwards compatible.
I'm imagining that that's the case. While you may be using some what you think are fairly sophisticated portions of .NET, you have no idea the depths of sophistication that some of the more recent versions have. I doubt seriously you're using some of those more esoteric features.
No, we're not. It's probably 8 to 12-year-old stuff at this point.
And that'll be fine. I look forward to it.
Okay. All right.
If there's nothing else, I think that we got it for today, unless you have anything else you need to tell me.
I don't believe we do.
So.
David, Casey.
Okay. Well, very well done, guys. I'm very pleased. I look forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
And you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.